Hi there. We are going to probably do a series, maybe, or at least a two-part. This is good stuff, but it's a lot of information, but definitely important. Many people don't know about a lot of this. And us, especially as adults, it helps to have the information for ourselves and for our children, but also to even maybe see or know and understand for other relationships you may have. So, how far will a lie take you? It might start with something small, you know, calling in sick when you're not. I'm sure we've all done that. Or avoiding uncomfortable conversations, or letting some believe, something that isn't quite true. But for some people, the lie does not stop there. It grows, it shifts, it adapts until one day the truth isn't just avoided, it feels dangerous. And the lie becomes the safest place to live. I'm gonna reach for, I got orange juice today with a little ice, getting that vitamin C in, right? Yum. So, why this topic matters. We often view lying as a moral issue, one of right versus wrong. But psychologically, lying exists even on a spectrum. Some lies are meant to spare feelings, some protect their reputation, and some protect identity itself. And when identity becomes dependent on deception, the consequences can be devastating to relationships, careers, credibility, and even freedom. This lesson is educational, not diagnostic. Remember, I am a nurse and a teacher, but it's about just understanding patterns today, not labeling people. So, core definitions: fictitious disorder. It involves the intentional production or exaggeration of physical or psychological symptoms. The motivation is not money, housing, or legal gain. The motivation is to occupy the sick role, to be seen as ill, cared for and sympathized with. This is a recognized diagnosis, in the DSM-5 under somatic symptoms and related disorders. The deception exists to be seen as unwell. Then there's pathological lying. You may have heard it before, but pathological lying is different. It involves chronic, elaborate deception that becomes part of someone's identity. The lies are often inconsistent, exaggerated, or even fantastical, and they frequently continue even when there is no benefit to lying. In many cases, the lie itself, proves internal gratification, control, attention, or protection of a fragile self image. Pathological lying, though, is not a formal DSM diagnosis, as we get in this today, because it appears across personality disorders, trauma responses, and narcissistic traits. Here, the lie is the point, not the outcome. Types of lying, they have even a method and motivation, right? So, not all deception looks the same. Paltering, this is the use of technically true statements arranged to create a false impression. Lying by omission, lying or excuse me, leaving out critical information so the overall story becomes deceptive. Then there's lying by commission, right? Fabricating information outright. By motivation, there's white or altruistic even lies meant to spare feelings. There's compulsive lying driven by internal urge. There's narcissistic lying, which is like ego protective or blame shifting. Pathological lying, excuse me, is identity based and even reflexive. And here's the crucial insight: some people lie without fully realizing they're doing it, even when confronted gently, even when the truth is obvious. And that point, the issue isn't advantage, it's reflex. Um, Escalation from avoidance to consequence. Lies tend to escalate when they are used to regulate emotion or identity. Sorry, let me adjust this. Okay, because I'm losing my train of thought. The progression often looks, though, like this. I had a little list of. All right, it was social discomfort, reputation damage, career collapse, and then legal consequences, and finally incarceration. Not always because of the original act, but because the truth is never allowed to surface. This is the part we kept reworking, to see what all fits here. I've spent like 6 hours even on this arranging, because it's people don't realize it's so layered, right? And especially if someone is so involved. I've seen a female I had in my career where she had these, like, a real lying storytelling, excuse me, as a teenager, to the detriment of others. And every time, she was put into another foster home and she had another, diagnosis from psychologists and psychiatrists, and she becomes a ward of the state, and then she's in this home and claiming that the reason why she set it on fire and killed all four children and the two adults was she didn't mean for the fire to kill anyone. She just wanted attention and she wanted out. And so she thought it would gain that. And, it becomes way bigger than herself, because then she's in prison and being interviewed, again and again, and she's wanting to get out even. And if you think about it, even 30 years later, and it's four or five, we're talking 6 lives that she took, even if it was an accident. When she was an adult, she was already over 18. And she was claiming that the couple was, being sexually inappropriate with her. However, it's like she couldn't tell the truth. Even when it was safe to do that, she'd been in jail 10, 20, 30 years. The story kept changing, and she kept, you know, being reviewed again by professionals and, denied probation, and says on camera, that she just expects to die there, live her whole life. But yet she's also like compulsively trying to get interviews and get, let out. So, um, but you can see how she's in the battle of herself. And so you can go from, like, real small to real big and life changing. It's, a bridge example, because when avoidance becomes entrapment, sometimes a lie doesn't begin with malice. It begins with fear or shame or avoidance, an impulsive rebound, a relationship never been meant to be permanent, and then a public narrative that feels easier than honesty, a photograph or a post on Facebook or, whatever social media. There's a couple of them now. A suggestion even like this laid out: Let's just say we're married. No legal marriage, no ceremony, but enough carefully chosen details to create belief. So we could pause there as another example because, like, an elaborate post on Facebook with the girl saying, I'm getting married tomorrow, starts off, that she sets up, but in such a way that you can see it is a rehearsal, not authentic. Then you see her, post a picture that was supposed to be like, we are married, when others can clearly see reality. Yet she doesn't realize that they are only fooling themselves till, they sober up and maybe she looks at it again later, possibly looking for her thumbs up or her comments, and there isn't any. Yet she doesn't realize, then you see, sorry, I lost my point. Um, the picture, it shows she actually attended a wedding. She may have even met this fictitious groom there or shortly before, but doesn't want the public to know it's a one night stand and wants to move in. But remember, shame begets shame because in reality, someone took a picture of her and him after she caught the bouquet. The guy who is in the picture, whom we will name Jason, is just seen laughing and visibly uncomfortable. Hold on one second. Let me take a sip. Um, yeah, he's sorry. So we're back to Jason, where he's seen in the picture, Lee laughing and visibly uncomfortable. Yet he still agrees with the woman's statement that we will call a counterfeit wife. She thinks she did it so the public will, believe them, right? But later will remove it because they know it's not true. And eventually it feels uncomfortable, even for both of them, that the lie is still standing there. Then they just agree privately with each other that they will just shorten the lie by then to both just keeping their status as married to each other with their names. So, over time, my point is the truth begins to outweigh the lie because maybe he begins to realize in many ways that he is sure he does not want to actually marry her at all. And her behavior after the agreement became her trying to control him or make him feel like she somehow owns him, making him feel even more uncomfortable. She posts then another picture later, like Christmas time, updating the lie with a statement, saying something to the effect of, like, look at all me and my new husband's um, array of, several presents just bought for each other and now all of my stepchildren. Instead of working on being desirable for that role to him and maybe even them. Um, it is more important, though, to her to update the lie with a big red bow on it. And this behavior actually begins to annoy him. He realizes that the validation from this perceived and fictitious audience is more important to her than keeping their relationship private, and stays focused on the commitment they both initially agreed to. Pays attention and not only learns, but also presents ways to make him feel more comfortable instead of more uncomfortable, right? So, This reminds me of a quote said by Marilyn Monroe. And if you don't know it already, I will share it with you because I think it even fits here. The famous quote is Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. This comment highlights her perception of one's misplaced values, prioritizing superficial interactions and commercial appeal over genuine human depth and integrity. It even begs the question, though, from another phrase that presents an additional thought. Are you starving for attention? It describes people needing emotional connection, often shown through lying behaviors or addictions like bragging, causing conflict, or even seeking validation, more so because they have low self esteem or past unmet needs, requiring healthier ways to get recognition, like therapy or hobbies. What it means, though, for these people is deep seated need, the root. It signifies a significant lack of emotional nourishment, validation, or connection, often rooted in childhood experiences or insecurity. Unhealthy behaviors, though, too, because people might act out with drama, constantly fish for compliments, or play the victim, or dominate conversations even to feel seen, or start arguments to be heard. And then there's the underlining causes. It can stem from personality disorders, ADHD, trauma, or even difficulty regulating emotions. That's paltering. Privately, the truth is acknowledged. Publicly, though, the lie remains. The confirmation comes that most individuals start to suffer the physical symptoms that manifest over time. They are beginning to feel the weight of the lie, the heaviness in the body, and never feel comfortable, but actually continue to feel worse. The lie feels worse, and in clear ways with the other person too. You've even you're even certain, that you don't want that to be your alternate reality anymore. But it takes you seeing that you're not running on God's will, but self will. He has been sending you all those uncomfortable ways as a direct confirmation that you are living a lie. You're not where you're supposed to be. And He has your truth waiting for you when you are ready to stop feeling resentful of yourself and even her silently. You finally want to live life much easier and happier too. And of course, even get the peace and the rest you are pleading for inside for way too long. Not realizing that it starts by simply choosing to stop lying to yourself. You need to end the relationship that is causing you more pain than peace so you can be led to your intended destination and all your symptoms disappear because you finally surrendered the lie that has kept you stuck. You instinctively may also begin to show or know where you should go. Otherwise, what started as avoidance slowly becomes a trap. Expectations grow, control increases, and correcting the story feels more dangerous than maintaining it. This isn't pathological lying, but it shows how easily truth is sacrificed when honesty feels unsafe. Then there's, criminal deception and narrative control, brief pattern, more focused. In a high profile criminal case, we often see the same patterns intensified, right? Shifting stories, calm effect that contradicts content, self victim framing, my favorite. Refusal to accept responsibility even when the facts are fixed. The teaching point is not the crime, it's the relationship to the truth. When a lie becomes more important than reality, reality is repeatedly rewritten. If you keep choosing the lie, only what you want gets fed, but not what you need. Then there's post conviction lying and the parole paradox. This pattern becomes especially clear after conviction. The pattern becomes especially clear after conviction for some people, some unfortunately sick people. But when the lie becomes your language of insight, they can speak fluently even about growth, trauma, and change. When they're at the parole hearing 30 years later, still. But the core facts remain untouched. The story softens even from the person's point of view, but the tone becomes reflective. Yet accountability is still avoided. And the irony is this: the lie that once protected you is now the very thing keeping you confined. In closing, I want to add the deeper lesson aspect to please reflect on. Jason never considered himself an addict. Even though he smokes, he drinks, he may use drugs, gamble, he didn't see himself, though, as someone with a problem. Also, many, many people do, it's often. But lying has become his coping mechanism, excuse me, not to gain money, not to avoid prison, at least not at first. He lied to manage discomfort, to control perception, to protect an image of himself he once thought he couldn't bear to lose. And over time, the lie stopped being a tool and became a dependency. Because the truth required something he did not know how to give, which is surrender. This is the part people miss. Lying can function even like an addiction, not because of chemicals. However, it also regulates emotions, identity, and fear. And like any addiction, it promises relief while quietly taking everything else. And the question isn't whether someone lies with final reflection. The question is, what function does the lie serve, and how far will it be taken to protect that function? Because truth doesn't just reveal facts, it reveals who you are willing to become. Just a suggestion, but you can make for yourself and your loved ones, especially the kiddos, because they learn from you. If needed, a bottle labeled no shame spray. Equal parts of whatever your preference is for smelling good, or you feel refreshed after being sprinkled with something specific. Then spray a little to improve the mood. A spritz for your anxiety, another one for your sweats, and even your self confidence. However, many times it is needed, and as often as you feel the need, spritz it to But be sure to share it with others, especially the ones closest to you. Be sure to share it with the little ones around you, especially because they will recover too. You, in essence, are practicing receiving and running towards the feeling and smelling good versus running from the solution, confronting your truth, or even, trying to get it to chase you. Over time, you are subsidizing what serves you, which suggests a process of gradual release and shedding of habits and relationships that no longer serve you. Um, I want to change that because a thought came to me. Or add, it also continues to contribute to, positivity for your well being. The word also subsidizing comes to mind. Here it's used metaphorically to mean fading away or diminishing in importance rather than the literal geological definition of land sinking. This process is a core concept in personal growth and self improvement, which involves acknowledging energy drains, recognizing the people and the situations or thought patterns that deplete your energy, your intuition, and motivation. I'd even add their credibility because you're creating a space. Ultimately, you're supposed to be creating in that space, though, growth, actively letting go of these elements to make room for new opportunities, clarity, and personal, like even alignment. It's important and necessary in a healthy way to even embrace change, having the courage to move on from what is familiar or comfortable, even if it feels like a loss, to pursue a life true to yourself, practicing self honesty, engaging in radical honesty to identify what is truly no longer useful or is causing pain. This ongoing process of shedding the old allows for, renewal and the opportunity to consciously construct a reality that is more fulfilling and aligned with your current self. I strongly urge you to do that, to be the living example for all the little people who rely on you to love and teach them through your actions so they don't repeat the wrong way but learn the right way, especially in the more important decisions they begin to make as adults, too, right? I look forward to seeing and sharing with you again real soon with the part two. But until then, stay safe and healthy and stand up and even out for your own true happiness because you deserve it. And your renewed kindness comes out to help yourself as well as others. It also helps us to bring hope to someone who is hurting right now. You are the blessing that they have been silently praying for all along. Okay, that is all for today. Thank you for meeting me here and receiving this message. Until next time, bye, guys.